The First Law Trilogy is a series that will make you question your own morals. You will fall in love with the worst kind of people. You will laugh out loud at cruelty. You will wallow in the bleakness and you will love it. Or, you might just be a normal, nice person and find it all repulsive. But that's what we're going to talk about in this video. The First Law Trilogy was written by Joe Abercrombie, and it is a landmark in the grimdark fantasy genre. The series consists of 3 main books: The Blade Itself, Before They Are Hanged, and The Last Argument of Kings. Abercrombie has crafted a world that is dark and packed with compelling characters, where the traditional notions of heroism are completely turned on their head. Now, that's not to say that the First Law is nihilistic, but it's gritty and it's morally complex, and the characters are flawed, the stakes are high, and the outcomes are completely unpredictable. It's this kind of unpredictability that makes the First Law series one of my favorites in all of fantasy, because it feels like every decision that the characters make is consequential. Like I said, this book is a cornerstone of the grimdark fantasy genre, but what exactly is grimdark fantasy? Grimdark fantasy is a subgenre that moves away from the classic good versus evil narratives that you'd find in books like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, the Chronicles of Narnia. And whereas these classic fantasy books kind of offer the reader escapism and a clear sense of justice and being inspired, Grimdark offers a more nuanced and often brutal portrayal of reality. In a grimdark world, heroes are flawed, villains are complex, and sometimes you can kind of sympathize with their motivations. And the lines between right and wrong are blurred to the point where the line becomes like a blurry smudge. And it's in that blurry smudge where the magic happens. One of the major themes of the First Law series is power. Who gets to have it? What are you willing to sacrifice for it? And who will be crushed under its weight? We see good men turned into monsters, corrupted by power, their minds being warped, and the devastating consequences that this pursuit can have, not only for the individuals themselves, but for entire nations. We see the little people that are paying the price for the games that the rich and the powerful play. It's brutal and it's dark, but it's real. Also, what's great is how each of the characters have their own kind of strategies for gaining power. Some use manipulation and betrayal, stabbing their best friends in the back, while others just use cold, hard violence. And that leads me to the best part of the series. Let me tell you about some of the nefarious characters that you're going to meet in the First Law Trilogy. First up, you've got Logan Ninefingers, aka the Bloody Nine. There's no main character in this series, but in my opinion, Logan is the guy we as the reader are supposed to be able to relate to the most. What makes him so fascinating is the kind of stark contrast between the different facets of his personality. Logan is a warrior of legendary skill. Because of his past and his reputation for the things that he's done, he's feared across the land. Wherever he goes, someone knows him. Everyone is just wanting to avoid him. Yet, despite his fearsome reputation, Logan is very reluctant to kind of jump into violence. He's tired of the endless cycle of violence and bloodshed that has defined his whole life. And this internal conflict makes him, in my opinion, quite a sympathetic character. He's introspective, he's funny, and even though everyone seems to fear him, he doesn't really take himself too seriously. Logan is also known for his kind of pragmatic outlook on life that encapsulates his motto. He's got this kind of catchphrase that he says all of the time, which is, "You have to be realistic about these things." And this phrase is repeated throughout the series, and it kind of reflects his understanding of the harsh realities of the world that he inhabits. However, it's the case with Logan that just because he doesn't want to do bad things doesn't mean that he can't, and doesn't mean that he won't. And Yeah, if you read the first book, you'll see what I'm talking about. Next up, you've got Jezal Dan Luther. I think that people have mixed feelings about this character. I find him to be one of the most intriguing characters because on the surface, he seems like your typical shallow, arrogant, spoiled nobleman. But every now and then, he can surprise you with his depth and complexity. When we first meet Giselle, he's dining out on his family name. He looks down on everyone who isn't at his level, and he's kind of obsessed with his social status. He wants prestige and glory, but he doesn't want to work for it. He wants everything just to come to him because in his life, everything has always come to him. He's never had to work for anything. Because we first meet Giselle as, let's be honest, a bit of a prick, he has an incredible amount of room for growth. His journey becomes all the more compelling as he faces real hardship for the first time in his enchanted life, forcing him to evolve in ways that he never imagined he'd have to, developing skills that he never really thought that he needed and requiring help from those that previously he would have looked down on. The evolution is slow and it's painful, but it feels realistic, and I think it kind of makes his story a bit more relatable. Next up, you've got Ferro Maljinn, and whereas the other characters are fascinating because of their complexity, Ferro is satisfying because she just has singleness of purpose. She wants revenge. She is driven by a burning hatred of the Gurkish Empire, which enslaved and brutalized her. And so, understandably, every decision that she makes has to pass through the filter. Does this bring me closer to vengeance? And only then does she act. She's a complete lone wolf. She finds it kind of annoying that she has to work with others. But every now and then, we get a chance to see Ferro and Logan kind of team up. And when they do, you can see their mutual admiration for each other's ability to fight and very efficiently take lives. The way that Joe Abercrombie writes fight scenes and battle scenes is so cinematic and really enjoyable, just such a visceral experience. It's really fantastic. So that's a great cast of characters. However, my favourite character in the First Law Trilogy is Sandang Glokta. So once upon a time, Glokta was exactly like Jezal Dan Luther. He was athletic and proud and arrogant. Men respected him, women kind of lusted after him, and he just had every advantage in life. But Glokta's life took a dramatic turn after he was captured and brutally tortured by the Gurkish. Now Glokta is severely disabled. Physical pain is just a constant presence in his life, and Joe Abercrombie kind of goes into vivid detail that can feel uncomfortable at times. He struggles to climb the stairs. He kind of says that stairs are his mortal enemy, and he can't really perform basic tasks without blinding pain. As you can probably imagine, this has turned him into a bitter shell of his former self. And the really sick thing is that now he serves as an inquisitor for the Union, using the same methods of torture that were once inflicted upon him. And that's another thing that's told in really vivid detail as well, is the torture scene. Sometimes it feels like we're just zooming in on the results of torture, and I think this is another reason why maybe not everyone will like this series. The torture scenes feel slow and methodical and kind of weirdly intimate. Glokta is not a good man, but he's definitely a tragic figure. Any illusions that he might have once had about morality and honor have all just fallen away because when he relied on these things, they didn't help him. In fact, they did the exact opposite. They hurt him. And so now, when we spend time with him in the first book, in the first scenes of the opening book, he's very cynical and he kind of has a survivor's pragmatism. So you might be asking, this bloke sounds absolutely horrible. Why is he your favourite character? Other than being a sympathetic character because of everything that he's been through, he's just He's just so funny. When people describe British humour, I think this is what they're talking about. He has this kind of cutting, cynical wit that exposes all the bullshit around him and all of the kind of manipulation that people are using. He can see through everyone. And every now and then it feels like Glokta is kind of turning over to us as the audience and saying, do you see this? Do you see what I have to deal with? You know? And that's one of the best things I think about Joe Abercrombie's writing style is that even in the midst of these grim circumstances, his characters often deliver hilarious lines that add layers of irony. There were moments in this trilogy where something really bleak was happening and I was just laughing out loud, which almost never happens when I read a book. Normally I do that thing, you know, where it's just like a nasal exhalation. You know, I just kind of reading it like, you know what I'm talking about. The dialogue is so good, the action is great, and also, if you're someone that likes to listen to audiobooks, the narrator Stephen Pacey absolutely brings these characters to life. His character work is so good, it never fails to amaze me how he can just give all of the characters in this massive world a unique voice. And as an audiobook narrator myself, Stephen Pacey is basically who I'm trying to be. So I've spoken about what I love about this trilogy. Let's talk about the reasons why you might not like this trilogy. Some people I think are going to read this and they're just going to feel really uncomfortable. These are the kind of books where you're going to learn to love a character and then you're going to watch that person do terrible things or have terrible things done to them. For people that read to escape from life and go to their happy place, which is a totally, in my opinion, legitimate reason to read, this book and probably this genre really is just not going to be for you. This book is more for people who enjoy gritty realism mixed in with their fantasy. I think most people, when they're in high stakes, life and death situations, wouldn't act entirely good or entirely bad. They're going to act somewhere in between. These books aren't entirely hopeless, though. For example, some of the darker characters have nice redemptive arcs, but it's just a bit of a grey mess. Also, another thing that you should know going into this trilogy is that the first book really feels like a bit of an introduction to the characters and their lives. I kind of think of it as like a book-sized prologue. I mean, don't get me wrong, I loved it. It's definitely more character-driven, though, than plot-driven. The plot kind of comes in a little bit later on into the books, the second and the third book. He gets stuck more into the plot. But it's still unstructured, though, I would say. And the book's unstructured plot is just another way that it stays true to life. In life, our plans don't always unfold as they're kind of expected to. There isn't always a clear path for us to follow, and sometimes we hit dead ends and feel like we've wasted our time, with the only takeaway being how we've grown from the experience and the lessons that we've learned. And so, you know, the plot's kind of lack of structure reflects this unpredictability that I was talking about. But again, it makes it feel just more true to life. I think one of the best things about this trilogy is that if you enjoy it, there's more to dive into. In fact, you can probably see up here. Let me just get the books. Okay, so here we've got the first trilogy. You've got The Blade itself. And then we've got Before They Are Hanged and The Last Arguments of Kings. So that's the first trilogy. This is the one that we're discussing now. But if you enjoy this, then get these standalone books. You've got Best Served Cold, and this book actually is in production currently with Rebecca Ferguson. If you know Rebecca Ferguson from what's she from? Silo and Dune. She is going to be starring in a movie adaptation of this book that's going to be released soon. And then you've got The Heroes, which is just military fantasy, just a big battle royale. The whole book is just one battle. And then you've got Red Country. So these are three standalone books that all take place in the same universe as the First Law Trilogy. and you get a lot of crossover characters. So characters that were present, but they were kind of like side characters in the first trilogy. They come back and play much bigger roles in these books. And then after that, you've got Sharp Ends, which is a collection of short stories, again, all in the same universe. And then finally, you've got another trilogy. There's a lot more to dive into. And all of this happens in the same world with all the crossover characters, advancing the politics, expanding the world. There's just a lot more. So yeah, if you like the first trilogy, you can basically make this book series your whole personality. And, you know, I have. I have. That's what you're watching now. I don't know if there's enough interest in this kind of thing, but if you would like to see me review each one of the books and kind of like do a read along through all of the books, then if there's enough interest in that kind of thing, I'll put the link to the video up here. If not, though, I'll put up another video that I feel like maybe you might like. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And as always, happy reading.